everyone, and welcome to week 8 of American Literature. This week, I'd like you to watch this lecture that you're watching now and the video that I'll be providing the link to. I'd also like you to actively read the following text. You'll be reading the biography information on James Fenimore Cooper. Then you'll read his piece called The Pioneers. These are all excerpts. And then The Last of the Mohicans. You'll also read Catherine Maria Sedgwick, read her bio, and then read the selections from Hope Leslie. Then I'd like you to participate in this week's discussion forum. So the other video besides this one that I'd like you to watch is the American Passages video on masculine heroes. I'd especially like you to focus on the first 17 minutes of the video, which really covers information on James Fenimore Cooper. It's a lot about what he built about the American myth through the Leatherstocking Tales and the character of Natty Bumppo. He was a man living on the border between wilderness and civilization and between Native American and European culture. Natty challenges notions about American identity. Cooper's adoption of feminine imagery to describe the American landscape and his romantic yet untimely dismissive view of Native Americans problematizes the role of gender and race in the construction of American identity. So watch that film. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the difference between James Fenimore Cooper and Catherine Maria Sedgwick, both of whom wrote what you would call early American epics. James Fenimore Cooper was a very popular author, and he remained basically a rite of passage for all young American boys to read until the middle of the 20th century. And his grander tales, in which Hawkeye, Natty Bumppo, the old hunter in the excerpts that you're going to be reading, was young and a superhero in buckskins, did much to shape not only the popular conception of the Eastern woods in the French and Indian War and the Revolution, but also popular ideas of what Indians were like and how to tell the, quote, noble savages, which he saw as mostly Delawares and Mohegans in these tales, from the skulking, villainous Hurons. Fenimore Cooper was engaged in doing several kinds of cultural work at once in these novels about Natty in the early days of settlement in the neighborhood of Otsego Lake, Lake George, and Lake Champlain. He was writing an epic of sorts, emulating the classic purposes of Virgil's to inspire his contemporaries with paragons of various virtues. But Fenimore Cooper was also writing romance, an emulation of Walter Scott, who had imbued Scotland with magic, legend, and melancholic beauty, a lot of money in the process. And Fenimore Cooper was also a man of political and social causes. Environmentalist ethics burst forth at times in these novels, as do moments of prophecy. As you read, try to notice Fenimore Cooper's slow developing sentences, and then also his delight in the carefully composed tableau, or the scenes he creates, and the affinity of such a style to the dark, emotion-charged ceremonial canvases of the Hudson River School of Painters, to which Cooper was closely aligned. The works he wrote were called the Leatherstocking Tales. In The Pioneers, the great hunter and scout Natty is an old man, a living tristful relic. In the last of the Mohicans, set almost half a century earlier, Natty is in his prime. A series that began as an elegy for a fading past of exploits in unspoiled wilderness becomes an imaginative return to those bygone glorious days of fully indulgent romantic storytelling. It's important to think about the paradox of the hero Natty's life. As one of the first pioneers in this valley, the story takes place. He's also making it possible for the pioneers that will follow to settle the land and wilderness he so admires. In chapter 3 of The Last of the Mohicans, it introduces Natty, Hawkeye, and Chingachgook, already familiar figures for readers who know the pioneers, and a new character, the young and powerful Uncas. And almost nothing happens except an extended conversation. What do you think are the purpose and effects of inserting this chapter of discussion in the opening pages of an adventure story? Also, as the notes make clear, Hawkeye often asserts that he is a man, quote, with no cross in his blood. In other words, that he is completely of European heritage. But Hawkeye in these stories is often presented as a true inheritor of the best of the Native American tradition. What cultural uneasiness might underlie Fenimore Cooper's presentation of his hero and his hero's assertions about himself? All right, let's move on to Catherine Maria Sedgwick. So the reading that we're going to be doing from her, the selections from her, give us two interesting core samples, chapters from a long, convoluted, and ambitious historical novel. Really, it's a more ambitious re-imaging of the early decades of the Bay Colony than the colonial sketches of Hawthorne and even the Scarlet Letter. Epic narratives were doing very well in Britain and America, as I just mentioned, including Walter Scott and James Fenimore Cooper. They were the grand figures on the literary scene when Sedgwick began writing. Hope Leslie, which is her work, dates from the later 1820s, the center period of Fenimore Cooper's work on the Leatherstocking Tales, and about a decade after two of Scott's big hits, Rob Roy and Ivanhoe. Complex stories of intrigue, star-crossed and secret love, revenge and feuds and battles and massacres, horrific and picturesque at once, these were standard fare for Cooper and Scott. What wasn't standard at all, however, is Sedgwick's emphasis on strong, cool-headed women as figures of agency rather than comely prizes to be rescued and protected again and again, like Cora in The Last of the Mohicans or Rebecca in Ivanhoe. There's a couple of other cultural and historical realities that you should pay attention to in order to understand the configurations of Sedgwick's project and the individuality of her achievement. In American fiction, the ennobling of the Indian was a motif that waited until the Indians were almost completely gone from the East Coast and the Piedmont, and readers of these novels in safe parlors and at snug firesides could dream their way back into these narratives without worrying about actual Native Americans in inconvenient numbers showing up at their front doors. Also, something else has shifted, which you can see in the notes about this text. Calvinism has evolved or eroded into a less restrictive sort of faith. Unitarianism has taken hold in the environs of Boston, and romantic, intuitive belief in the beneficence of nature and the brotherhood of humankind has spread from Germany and France through England to the domesticated woodlands of the American East, where it flourished. When Hope Leslie and Majewiska affirm at their emotional parting that a benign divinity oversees and welcomes them all, they are neither of them thinking like 17th century Calvinists, but rather joining together in a kind of affirmation that you may have already seen in some of the texts that we've seen. And we'll see it again, though, when we start reading Longfellow and the Fireside Poets of the late 1800s. Okay, so after you've watched this lecture and the lecture from American Passages called Masculine Heroes, I'd like you to answer these two questions as part of the discussion forum. And for this week, please make sure you answer your own question for your own, post your own post first, using evidence from the text, quotations, many of them, to support what you're saying. Then respond. You have to do that by Friday night at 11:59 p.m. Then by Monday at 11:59 p.m., I want you to respond in detail with quotations to support what you say to at least 3 of your peers' posts. Try to make this a conversation. Try to extend what they're saying. You guys are doing much better with this. I just want to continue to urge you to do so. All right, that's it for this week. I'm sorry about my voice. I've been really sick, and I am also sorry about canceling the midterm. But the great news is you all did great on your midterm because I had to cancel it. Everybody got 100%. All right? So this week, focus in on these great epics of American literature as we continue to try to define what is American literature.